Okay, it's still TMI Monday with yours sincerely. We go straight to our first discussion, a major talking point on the show today, which is on Nigeria's unity and stability and the challenge of ethnic agitations. Of course, you see, reviewing the papers this morning, you can sense that as well from the comment or from the statement credited to IYC, directed to Buhari, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And of course, the PDP is asking why is the ruling party suddenly getting more interested in restructuring. Well, these are the discussions that we are focusing on the show today. I have with me in the studio the Executive Director of Foundation for Good Governance and Social Change. Well, they call him the living legend. I believe he's also a living legend, Comrade Austin Osakwe. Yeah, many don't know that he's actually a lawyer, Barrister Austin Osakwe, but he prefers to be called Comrade Austin Osakwe. So we'll leave it at that. Comrade, many thanks for joining us on TMI.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, viewers.
We also have joining us Dr. Pedro Obaseki. He'll be here shortly. I'm sure he's very, very close. But let's get the discussion off the ground. Now, in recent times, we've seen these agitations growing with new entrants into the agitation. That's coming from the southwest. Even though we know that the Oduwa People's Movement organization has always been there, but there is a new entrant. What is the foundation for these agitations that we've seen all across the country? But I'm sure even before you go into that, you probably want to share some thought with us on the return of President Muhammadu Buhari. Some say it was fast-tracked, it was accelerated, it was instigated by the protest by your comrades in UK who laid siege on the Abuja house in London. Is there any correlation? Can you draw any correlation?
Well, it's difficult not to see a correlation. We have a saying in my place that the witch flew last night and a baby died this morning. There is no need setting up a committee to determine who killed the baby. But I think what is fundamental is that the president is back, and from the reports we are getting, he appears to be better in health. He made a test statement this morning for a few minutes. The statement for me was akin to restating his readiness to be of service to Nigeria and ruling out a warrant, a statement. I wouldn't want to call it a threat, but clearly a call to arms against all those who are perceived as terrorists, and all those who are perceived as enemies of the nation. So for me, Mr. President is welcome back. I am particularly interested in seeing how his return will calm frayed nerves, and then of course show some level of rededication to the numerous problems that Nigeria is presently facing. So I say welcome back to work. In the next few weeks, we will see how his return begins to impact on the socio-economic life of the country.
Okay, I'll come back to you shortly. But just to quickly let our viewers know that Dr. Don Pedro Obaseki, a veteran broadcaster, a lecturer, a teacher, someone who's done so much in the media, but also very, very active in politics, and then the convener of the Midwestern movement. I'd like to thank you very much, Dr. Don Pedro Obaseki, for joining us on the show this morning.
Good morning, Sonny. And Austin.
My brother, you're welcome.
Thank you, sir.
I mean, the president is back. Were you expecting that, as it were? I mean, what does this really, portend for the country? I saw just on the papers that it will either crash the economy, or it has implications for the economy and the
No, I think there is nothing that helps an economy like a stable polity. Ill or not, a president in a seat will rev off the market forces more than an absentee president. And to that extent, I think on an economic level, not thinking like a politician or a partisan person, it is to the glory of the country and to the health of the economy for the president to be on his seat.
Okay.
And I think that will help the economy. And to all intents and purposes, everybody falls ill. So I will say welcome back, Mr. President.
What do you make of his nationwide broadcast today?
I don't expect anything. On a very serious note, anybody who is expecting anything tangentially different from the status quo will be putting himself on the path of high blood pressure. I think that there's going to be a lot of palliatives. There's going to be a lot of, I'm sorry I've been away, but I'm back to the seat now. And I don't think for those who have opposed him, particularly with the demagogic way they had handled his absence, I don't think those who have been in opposition to that will find anything tangentially exciting to take away. I think the president will try to, as much as possible, also make sure all the fears are allayed. But nothing, when I say nothing, there's nothing that is going to be that's going to be different.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think he's just going to apologize and then we'll move on.
Okay. Comrade, let's set the foundation for the discussion on Nigeria's stability and unity and the challenge of ethnic agitation. What is the origin of all of these that we're seeing today, in your opinion?
Well, first, I don't know how far back we can go, but to just mention that some people have referred to Nigeria as an agglomeration of nations, or nation states, if you like. I have particularly mentioned that I do not see why the old Benin Empire couldn't have survived and prospered as a nation of its own, with territory expanding as far as Dahomey, present Benin Republic, with the soldiers of the old Benin Empire establishing a camp in Eko, now Lagos. That's more than a country. That's actually a continental force. To bring it back home, you have the Hausa nation, or the Fulani nation, the Igbo nation, the Yoruba nation, the Midwest nation. These are all nations, the Kalabari nation. These are all nations that were brought together. I don't want to say welded together. They were brought together by a fiat, albeit colonial. Now, having been brought together, you're having a kind of confluence of strange bedfellows. Over time, over 50 years now, we have tried to see how we could get a nation out of these nation states. It is the failure of that attempt that has precipitated all of these agitations for a return to where we were. And you can't blame anyone. If we must live together, even within the family, if you have a family of more than 10 people, it becomes a central issue as to how that family should live together. Yeah. Let alone a community or even a nation as large as Nigeria. Like I said, several nations put together. If we are to continue to live together as some have insisted, then we must all be part of setting an agenda, setting a basis for this living together. We can't live together by force. Because the danger in forcing us to live together by force is that one day it will bubble, will burst, and the center cannot hold. So we have had over time very grave injustices. We have had lopsidedness in every facet of our national life, whether it is in appointments, whether it is in sharing of the so-called national cake, whether it's a deployment of resources to solve certain problems. There have been obvious injustices. And I'd like to mention that the president himself today, while reading the Riot Act to so-called terrorists and ethnic chauvinists, admitted in 2 test sentences that 1, there are challenges, and that 2, those who are making a claim for, are calling for restructuring, do have a legitimate basis for doing that. And that gladdens my heart. So if the president accepts that, the next point, therefore, is not to wage war against so-called dissidents. It is now to call a confluence and say, look, where do we start from here? Redressing these injustices. I have mentioned before now that no matter how Austin Osakwe, no matter how nationalistic I want to be, no matter the love I have for Nigeria, it is becoming increasingly difficult for me to explain to my 2 boys and 2 girls, who are my children at home, that we truly are one Nigeria. Because the one who is reading law now knows that he wrote exams with other children, and that he needed to score a certain number, a certain score to be able to get there, and that another person from another area of the country didn't need to score up to half of that to be in the same faculty. Whereas those who scored far higher than that one today are forced to read geontology, are forced to read crop science or whatever, just so they could go to school. So these are some perceived injustices. Okay. So when you ask, why have the agitations continued?
Yeah.
They have continued because the factors that have precipitated this agitation have not been genuinely and objectively addressed.
Dr. Pedro Obaseki, you have convened the Midwestern movement. Some say all of these agitations are elitist. It's just people who probably trying to create a platform for themselves to have a go at the national cake.
Well, is there a national cake? Maybe it's a national chin-chin. You know, be that as it may, you see, the truth of the matter is anybody who does not see the existential nature of the threat that the nation faces now is playing ostrich. We in the Midwest movement, we did not, it's not a platform for any, it's a pan-Edo Delta, non-partisan platform made up of persons who are major players in both parties, made up of people who are professionals, people who are academicians, people who are retired army generals, young people. Increasingly, we are getting tremendous, humongous attention from the youth segment of the polity. But you see, I just want to make this clear. Any time that people don't take into consideration anything that is just above the arithmetics of everyday living, they are just existing. The Midwest area, the Midwest territorial area, is the most maligned in this clamor for ethnic nationalism. Most maligned in the sense that it is a pity that history has been unfair to us. We are the only part of Nigeria that was duly and constitutionally put together, created. The 1960, 1963, 1979, and the 1999, which are the 4 functional constitutions we've had as a nation, made it clear that before you can delineate or create any federating unit, you must have a referendum. Only the Midwest, or the present areas of Edo and Delta, that was created via a referendum or a plebiscite on the 13th of July 1963, where 89.01% of the people who live in these 12 tribes, from Akoko Edo to Patani, all voted 89.01% yes to be created. Every other state created in Nigeria, or even the 3 original regions that were created at independence, were done by fiat. Austin used the word before, fiat. They were legislated away by a band of persons sitting in their parlor. We don't even know whether they drink paraga. And they just created states. Now, the British created the 3 regions by fiat, with great opposition from people of the Midwest, led by our late Oba Akenzwa II. And much later, after the breakout of the Nigerian, just before the break, just at the nick of the Nigerian Civil War in July 1967, Gowon, by fiat, broke the country into 12 states. So the Midwest, that used to be 1 out of 4 regions, became 1 out of 12. So if there was 1,000 naira being shared among the regions as of 1966, January 14th, the Midwest will have, if it is done pro rata, will have gotten 250 naira. But by the very next year, we were now 1 over 12. So we will be getting less than 100 naira. Now we became 1/19 by the fiat of General Murtala Ramat Mohammed. He just changed the name, which was also illegally done, and changed it from Midwest to Bendel, which was an aggregation of Bini Delta. And in 1987, it was changed to 21 states by Babangida. We became 1/21. Until 1991, when Babangida split it into 30 states, we became 1/15. Abacha split it into 36 states and then we have 2 states, which is 2/36, which is equal to 1/18. So we are actually the most maligned part of this country. In 1966, January 14, that is just the day before the coup, the northern region was one entity, the Midwest was one entity, and by the fiat of today, there are 19 states in the north. Meanwhile, Kanu, as at that time, had 16 divisions. 16. Edo and Delta together had 14 divisions. The Kanu as at that time had 3 divisions. Dutse, had Hadeja, and Kanu. We had 14 divisions. Today, Edo and Delta combined is 39 local government areas. While Kanu State has been split into Kanu and Jigawa, and together they aggregate 73 local government areas. So the degree of marginalization, the degree of encroaching on the very psyche of the Edo and Delta nation cannot be wished away. So what we have decided to do, why we formed the Midwest movement, was simply, number one, they were drawing their maps all over the place. Biafra drew their map and ended at Ofosu. Oduduwa drew their map and ended at Okpanam, and Asaba, and Ila. And we said, hold on, wait a minute. The heroes past of this same place had fought assiduously from the formation of the original Midwest movement in 1951 by Jereton Mariri, Anthony Enahoro, the Oba of Benin, Oba Kenzwa II, and to fight. Now you are taking us back there. Meanwhile, everybody must know that when a war breaks out, if it does break out, may it not happen.
Amen.
We pray it not, because war has no pretty face. War fine only for television. Biniman say, Okuemo say. But if it happens, the Edo and Delta peoples are at the very epicenter, the nexus.
Why is that so?
Because you cannot traverse from the south to the north. You cannot traverse from the east to the west. You cannot traverse from the west to the north of Nigeria without passing through a territory of the old Bendel or the Midwest. For you to drive from Lagos to Abuja, you must pass through Langpese and Ibilo. For you to move from Asaba, from Onitsha, to any part west of the Niger, you must pass through the entire width of our state.
Okay.
And in 1967, while that war broke out, less than 2 months after the war broke out, in August 1967, they flooded Edo and Delta State in 24 hours. In 24 hours, Major Banjo was at Dennis Osadebe Avenue. And it is reported then that David Ejo, who was then the military governor of Edo State, of Midwest State, had to run out of Benin on a bicycle. But why we formed the Midwest movement is to make them understand that this is not 1967.
Okay, let me pause you there. Comrade, for some analysts, all of this agitation, they are more heightened at its highest peak, just now, which means all along they've been building up. Nobody took notice of it. I saw in the papers this morning, IYC, telling PMB not to snub the agitations by ethnic nationalities. Is restructuring the answer to all of this?
Well, restructuring is one of the options open. And I must say it's a major option. In which case, if you cannot have fried rice, perhaps you could try jollof rice or white rice. The closest to the road to justice is restructuring. And I'll let you know this. I've heard a lot of people come out to say, and some very prominent individuals who prefer to hide their heads in the sand like the ostrich, say restructuring is wishful thinking, that is neither here nor there. And I wonder what moves them. I wonder whether some of them are high. Now,
no, they're entitled to their opinion.
Yeah,
you have to take it on them.
I mean, there are
certain
opinions that are so nonsensical.
By your judgment.
I'm forced to agree with Austin.
But that's your judgment.
Well,
please stay on course.
I'll tell you this, for instance, and this is for everybody to see. We have a so-called federal structure that is so far away from federalism that anyone can say it. The best way to promote competence, the best way to promote productivity is to make the individual be sure that whatever he puts in, he gets back. That's fundamental. That's what great nations of the world have been built on. And I don't want to go too far to talk about America and all of those, but to just mention that a situation where you know that God has blessed you with certain resources, God has blessed you with certain capacities, you know that these resources, these capacities are being used not for your own benefit, and you are there, you are alive, and somebody is saying, bear it. That's ungodly. What makes Sonny Okosun Sonny Duke Okosun tick is the fact that when he brings us to the studio, he challenges us to bring out the very best in us. By the beauty of the language, by the research he does even before this program.
Yes.
If you go to the street and pick anybody to come and do it, it will be a faux pas. You will create a problem that even the establishment can't solve. Now, we have a so-called federal government that appropriates to itself about 62%
More than.
of the total resources of this country. It keeps it there.
It's even more than.
It's more than.
Yes.
It keeps it there. And then at the end of the month, it will dish out stipends to 36 states.
Like they just shared 2.something trillion naira.
And I ask the question, sir, when you say Federal Ministry of Agriculture,
Where are
they doing the agriculture?
Yes. Agriculture is local based.
If you remember, sir,
Yes.
Glasnost and Perestroika
Yes.
in the former Soviet Union,
Yes.
the moment the component parts,
Or begin to agitate to dismantle.
the moment they took their place, there was no federal.
There was no federal.
That's how Gorbachev lost his job.
Yes.
He just discovered that he was sitting nowhere.
Yes.
The same thing, there will be no federal government without these federated states.
Yes, I agree.
So number one for restructuring, sir, is that we need to leave the resources where God has deposited it. And then, because we have chosen to still be together, we can now pay some form of royalty to keep the center. The center should just be concerned with foreign policy,
Defense.
immigration. For me, that is it. Why do you have unity schools? So-called unity schools.
When the entry modules is not unified.
You call it unity school, and you set different entry requirements for different sections of the country.
Yes.
And yet our constitution tells us, sir, that no person will be discriminated against on the basis of ethnic origin, on the basis of gender,
Yes.
on the basis of age, on the basis of religious persuasion, in which case, whether it's Christian, Muslim, traditional African religion, whatever you call it, Hare Krishna, what one is entitled to, the other one is entitled to, as long as they can show capacity.
Yes. Agreed.
That a man and a woman will not be different in sharing. So when you begin to tell me that it is 35% affirmative action and all right, I call that tokenism, because opportunities must be made available, equal to all. That's equity. So if I am a Benin man, I should be able to aspire to the highest office in the land. especially when I find that those who have come from a particular part or occupy those positions have not been able to convince me over time that they are doing a better job than myself. That is the issue, sir. So when they say, what are you calling for restructuring for? We are saying that for there to be peace, we don't want the peace of the graveyard. We don't want the peace of the mosquito. We want peace that is a product of justice. Okay. And the only way to have that justice is for every Nigerian to be sure that they are a part owner of the Commonwealth, and that they will not fear to negotiate, but they will never negotiate out of fear. This is the issue.
Okay.
And finally, sir, this is important. Over time, you asked just now, they have always been this. Why is it intense now? It is intense now because there is a failure of leadership. Successively, we have put people in positions of authority to manage our common patrimony who do not have an idea of what next to do to bring prosperity to our people. Why will a man in Igbo land not wonder, sir, whether he belongs to this nation, when clearly appointments are made and a huge portion of the country is totally left out? If we had a leader who saw Nigeria as his constituency, when I say Nigeria, I mean every part of this country. Somebody from Asaba, somebody from Oriomo, somebody from Yenagoa, somebody from Kanu, somebody from Jebode, somebody all over the country. One man is there as president. He regards all of these places as his primary constituency. So he does not begin to do things that show to some people that he is for those other ones, when clearly we now all know that we are for nobody, but we are for everybody.
Okay.
We need to actually be for nobody, but for everybody. This is the issue. The alternative is to have that kind of leader thrown up. But I tell you, the political process that brings about leaders, that throws up leaders, is unfortunately designed in such a way that that cannot be achieved. So I say the closest to reality, the closest to justice is restructuring.
Okay.
And we can start with fiscal federalism.
Okay, exactly what I was coming to with Dr. Pedro Basiki. People have also talked about devolution of power as a model to addressing
I wanted to, without wanting to repeat some of the things that Austin has said, I have a very specific, but not diametrically opposite, but a very specific. When you say restructure, as a professor of the language, I wonder why Nigerians use words that have no definites. Restructure. What does that mean? It's just changing. So what are you changing to? What is the modus? What is the status quo that you want to change from? Restructure is to do is to make an entity take another form. But that is not what I think we should do. We think that there should be a re-federalization, because the problem is the dismantling of the federal arrangement that was done by men who had heads, that were done when men were men, to use that cliche, and women were won by those who deserved them. From the 1948 constitution of the Richards Constitution, through the Manufacturing Constitution, through the Independence Constitution, Nigerians sat at tables. So if you were an Ishekiri man, you are sure that there is as oppressed. If you are a Benin man, you are sure maybe there is Gaya Sobaseki or there is Humphrey or Mausaigi. If you are a Hausa man, so there was a conference of nations sitting on tables to negotiate. He used the word. He said we shouldn't negotiate out of fear, but we should not fear to negotiate. Yeah. And so there was a reasonable agreement. How could they progress unless they both agree? And the consideration was simple. It is called the 50-30-20. The 50-30-20, all Nigerians must know today, is the original federal arrangement where the constituent region or the federating unit holds on to 50% of the total resources, earnings, accruables coming from it, both internally generated and other sources of revenue, including the natural resources. And then 30% is put in a federation account. Then 20% goes to the federal government. Now, when the federal government collects 20 from 36, it still remains a huge behemoth. Meanwhile, that state, that is why Bermuda would have been able to build 3 stadia in the old Midwest at almost one at the same time, building Ogbe Stadium and building Warri Stadium and building Asaba Stadium at one at the same time, because the resources thus were available. Now, in the constitution from 1979 to 1999, there is absolutely no mention of that arrangement. In his last word, he said, a return to fiscal federalism. Federalism is a fiscal affair, is a financial affair. Then that 30% that is put in the federation account is now redistributed among all the federating units according to demography, according to population. That is how it is done. Nigeria is a skewed federalism, and a federalism that exists only on the face of the paper the constitution is printed on. Nigeria is a unitary system of government that parades itself as a pseudo-federalism. There needs to be a structural dismantling of the Nigerian Federation as it is presently constituted. Anybody who says anything opposite of that is not only playing the ostrich, but it's also very, very, very economical with the truth. That is where we must go. A re-federation, a return to the pre-1966 junketing moves of all the military boys. When I was growing up, I'm sorry, with all due respect, I'm on public television. I knew I grew up fighting to join the army. And I was told when I was serving at NDA by my mother, who almost went naked at the house of General Patrick Aziza, not for me not to enter the army, because it was supposed not to be meant for those who are very, very intellectually sound. So, but those set of people whom we had such skewed ideas over sat, and over time between 1966 and then first 1979 and later from 1983 to 1999 dismantled the very fabric upon which this nation was built. Not the militocracy. I'm talking about the physical federalism that they dismantled. So today they give us 30% derivation. Derivation for what? It is like stealing a man's property and then allowing him to peep at that property through the window. That is what it is. So number 2, when you balkanize the country, I remember when they were fighting for state creation in 1976, the clamor. Obafemi Awolowo said, once you start creating states, until my village Ikene becomes a state, we won't stop. So what we have now are states that are totally unviable. States that are beggar states.
Isn't that akin to all of these ethnic agitations that you're finding?
No, because
isn't that akin to it?
No,
the creation of states or the agitation for states. Isn't it
there's a structural defect ab initio. Because people agitate for those things as a result of the perception of marginalization. So maybe if I get my own, they will listen to us. Let me give you an example of this Midwest. The Beninese and the Urhobos were the majority in that entity. But there was a fine arrangement that did not disrupt the cosmic balance of the Midwest or Bendel by ceding to the Anioma, to a man from Oshimili, Dennis Chukwude Osadebe, as prime minister, as premier, as the executive officer of the state. But it was from a minority. And the deputy was John Ekpere Otobo from Isoko, another minority. When we came back in 1979, today the Esan nation makes up 16 to 17% of Edo state. So in a larger state like Bendel, it was actually less than 7.8. But we considered the governorship to the Esan nation. In Ambruzali, his deputy was Demas Akpore. Why the speaker was not Isuko Irobo Binio? The speaker was from a minority of a minority in Basin, Alebe from Ora. What did that show you? That in the relationship between all these factors, they are built in within the superstructure, a mechanism that ensured the defense of minority rights. That is what is wrong with the Nigerian Federation. A system that is built whereby those who produce the wealth of the nation must become beggars, so as to continue to knock and kneel at the seat of those who are legislating away their future. That is where the problem is. There must be a structural dismantling so that we can sit together and return to the real federal arrangement, which was truncated on the early hours of the 15th of January 1966.
Okay, as we conclude this discussion, I'd like to know from our panelists, is there any role from the constitutional conferences that have been held in the past in addressing these issues? Those who attended those conferences will tell you easily that all of these issues were canvassed. But interestingly, the government of the day, as several forums have said, they're not interested in those conferences, especially the last one. And then I remember when this, part of the campaign promises of the present administration was on restructuring. But until PMB went on medical vacation, we didn't hear nobody talk about it. And then, of course, the leader of the ruling party, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, actually raised the issue at the function. He didn't attend, but sent someone to attend. So, comrade, in 1 minute, what role has these conferences to play in this discourse about restructuring the country based on all of these agitations happening?
I have often said that it is easier to wake up somebody who is sleeping than to wake up the one who is pretending to be sleeping. Conferences were set up to what intent and purpose? Those who set up these conferences, who engineered it, did they think that they were ever going to implement any of the recommendations? That's it for you. You just mentioned it. We have had several conferences. What came out of it? Is it not a sign, another sign of madness, that when we set up a conference, we will conclude, then we'll start another round of discussion as to whether we intend to implement the recommendations of the conference. So we never wanted it, and that's exactly what we are having. That's why something radical needs to be done. And like I said in my opening, I am glad that Mr. President is back. I am also glad that he affirmed in the 2-minute statement that he read this morning that first, those who are asking for something to be done to the Nigerian Federation, which we have termed restructuring, do have a justifiable grievance. And that two, there is need for something to be done about it. However, he used the term economic integration. I don't know what that one means. I don't know what is going to be integrated. For me, that's another way of trying to delay the inevitable. We have used too many grammatical, I don't know what to call it, to cloud our faces, to try to cover our faces with the wool. I tell you, sir, and you can begin to postpone it. The reality on ground today is that these agitations are going to increase. The best way out of it is to revert to what is clearly visible to all. That a man will work harder. Oyibo is not coming to solve our economic problem. What will solve it? A man will work harder if he knows that what he is working for, he can see it. My people have a saying for it. They say, I do a man will do. We want to be sure that when we are working with the resources God blessed us with, we are seeing it. We don't need, look, when you talk of federal character, zoning and all that, they are all escapists to run away from the reality. In fact, the people you are calling educationally disadvantaged states will never become advantaged as long as you are spoon-feeding them.
It's not a curse.
If a man, no, it's not a curse at all. It's a reality. If a man knows that he doesn't need to work
and he gets paid
to get something, why should he work?
Agree.
If a man knows that all he needs to do is write his name in the exam hall and he's going straight to the university to read the choicest courses, why should he read? So instead of these escapist routes that we are all going for, let our leaders sit down get us involved in this discussion and agree that the easiest way out of this is for us to grow at our own paces.
Yes.
After all, we had the groundnut pyramids.
Yeah.
Nobody worried about it.
Yeah.
We had the famous
P&P,
rubber. We had cocoa.
AT&P.
Why has oil gone into everybody's head? And in case they don't know, let me sound it. Oil is going. Countries now are making laws, putting a deadline
On the use of fossil fuels.
Fossil fuels.
Yes.
cars that we use fuel are being
Phased out.
So return the oil to the soil and put coal back in the hole. After we have done that, where do we go from there? Private initiative, individual initiative in production is what will lead us out.
So when oil is gone, probably it will be forced into.
We'll have
the by force restructuring, as it were.
Don Pedro waits for the house to fall before he calls the fire brigade.
Dr.
I think the house has fallen. We are just.
I hope it hasn't.
No, when I say the house has fallen, I mean I say figuratively.
Okay.
You know, because a nation is a state of mind. A nation. Nigeria is a country. Until you ask the Edoma and say, and he says, Nigeria, then there is no nation.
Okay.
Well, for me, my take home, what I want to, my passing shot is actually to people from Edo and Delta. The reason is he spoke about leadership. Our leaders should not remain a band who will go to Abuja, collect a tier rubber, Ghana must go, and come back to speak and dispense 1,000 naira to our people. Those days are gone. And that is why people like, I'm not scared. People like us are here now. We are going to knock on every door, on every floor, and talk to every face in every place. I'm happy that people like Austin are also in this polity, who are so passionate, because the power is in the passion. It is for the Edo nation and the Delta peoples to know that unless we speak up as 1/4, we will be forgotten on the dung heap of yesterday.
Okay.
And that is, finally, sorry, sir.
Yeah.
You know, we've been talking about South, Southeast,
Yeah.
Northeast. Number 2, South, Southeast, Southwest are not constitutional arrangements. They were the mere mentioning of Alex Ekweme to create a political arrangement for the interaction between all the federative units, because there were too many.
Yeah.
Number 3, the president of Nigeria, the immediate past president, was born an Easterner. Jonathan was born in the Eastern region. The Midwest region is still out there like a kid naked. And finally, when Nigeria stopped its real federalism, the Edo and Delta peoples were negotiating and interfacing with Nigeria as 1/4. If we remain that way, we cannot go anywhere negotiating as 2/36.
Thank you, gentlemen, for the thoughts that you've shared on the show today. I hope you learned one or two things from it. That's the essence of this program. Big thanks to Dr. Don Pedro Basiki.
Thank you, sir.
Comrade Austin Osakwe. Austin, smile now.
We'll
We'll take a short break. We'll take a short break. Eugene will be here to be part of the show in a moment. Don't go away.